All right, so J6 is back because the media says it's back. Our politicians, the ones that are owned by corporations, they say it's back. The goal of this is obviously to destroy anybody who had questions, just questions. And by the way, YouTube as a platform, they not only do they throttle this channel down, and there are so many examples I can give of when they've done that to me, and it's ridiculous now. And now they're taking subscribers away again, which they were doing prior to a whole bunch of people coming over. Not only do they throttle content, but they tend to censor when people are just asking questions. All right. And you're not allowed to ask questions when it comes to J6. You can't do it. Because there's a whole other side to this. But now we've got, the Disney production, the ABC production of the Insurrection, right? You know what the Insurrection should be about? What's happening in our country right now, the government insurrection against the people when it comes to inflation, when it comes to culture, when it comes to our schools and what they're doing to children, medical tyranny, which is out of control. You can go down a list, and this had been predicted last year by somebody who's always on with Steve Bannon, Naomi Wolf, who has predicted that we probably aren't going to have midterm elections, right? And right now, I would say that prediction is about 50-50. I would say it's 50-50 that we're going to have midterm elections. And you'll say, oh no, some states will have them, but it will put everything into a constitutional crisis. And then again, you're going to have mail-in ballots with no chain of custody, none whatsoever. And you have nobody who's interested in looking at video evidence. You don't have anybody who's interested in that. You have people who are presented with the information and then they pretend it doesn't exist. And this, by the way, this is across the board on so many issues. We are in, they called a state of emergency over the so-called thingdemic, right? State of emergency, like our state, our country, state of emergency, time to lock down, right? Well, if, the gas prices continue to go up, they're going to say, hey, people, you guys probably need to shelter in place and not go anywhere. I mean, they're not telling you to do that, but it's going to be your decision. Like, I was going to go on a vacation. I was going to travel upstate. I was going to do something with my family. This is too expensive. I took a trip to Georgia about 2 weeks ago for my daughter's wedding. I spent, I don't know, I lost track. We have this little credit card we use at the pump, and it has a low limit on it. And I think we maxed it. Which was $300 or $400. Like I said, it's a low limit, and it's that way on purpose. So we don't, overuse it, but it's convenient at the pump because you can pay at the pump and you don't have to worry about security and so forth. You just get in and get out. And it's crazy. I mean, I don't know what a plane ticket costs right now from where I live to Atlanta, Georgia, but it's comparable probably in what I spent. And then obviously, 18, 19 hours on the road. They don't want you doing that. They don't want you doing that. They want your summer to be ruined. I mean, our summer was ruined last year. Our summer certainly was ruined in 2020. Everything was off limits, and there's no real concern for those of us who work for a living, who aren't part of the elite group of people making all these decisions for people that they don't understand. We're not part of that group. And when things are going this badly, you've got things like inflation, the money is becoming worthless. The housing market, by the way, is starting to really cool off. And that's a sign that you're going to see 2009 when it comes to the housing market. You're going to see foreclosures all over the place. You're seeing food shortages in certain areas. You're seeing a continuation of the baby food issue, right? And because we've isolated Russia, right? And Russia's doing great, by the way. Just a little footnote, Russia is doing fantastic. The sanctions became an opportunity for Russia to look at themselves and say, you know what, we can make this stuff ourselves. We can do anything that we put our minds to do. Remember when America was like that? Now we feel as though we have to be, I don't know, the world's policeman and worry about other countries. And we don't worry about our own country. That's why the term America First, right, which is linked obviously to Donald Trump, but it's bigger than Trump. It's just saying, look, we've got a sovereign country. We no longer, by the way, have borders. So I don't know if we have a sovereign country. I really believe we are just a hemisphere. America is part of a hemisphere. We're really not a sovereign country. I know that's a stretch. Maybe Brazil, they're their own country because they've got somebody actually sticking up for their people. And there may be a couple of other countries in South America, but truly we are one landmass, and we're linked, and people decide which place they want to live, and they just show up, and then they're allowed in without consequences. And we don't know who these people are, what their motivation is. Some of it is just purely economic migration. They go from a bad situation to another bad situation, but our bad situation is better than their bad situation. That's the way I think they're looking at it. But all these people who are searching for utopia, right? They're searching for a way out of these oppressive governments, are arriving here in America and finding that we have an oppressive government as well. So it's interesting that you've got these migrants, these caravans, something like 10,000 people coming up and about to cross our southern border. Again, another problem. There could be hearings on what's happening at the border. There could be hearings about the baby food catastrophe. There could be hearings about the energy crisis we are currently in. You want to declare a state of emergency in America? And again, I'm not into lockdowns. I'm not into martial law. I'm not into any of this stuff because it's just crazy how far we've come in a little over 2 years. This is where we're at, or a little under 2 years, actually. And people are incessantly worried about what happened on J6. And last night, apparently, I didn't watch it. I'm sure people have commentary about it. I believe it was a well-produced, staged, choreographed, they hate Donald Trump so much. They impeached him twice, and they're trying to not only impeach him now, but indict him. That's what I think this is about. And Trump better be careful, because these people have gotten away with everything that they've set out to do. The medical tyranny we've experienced over the last 2 years, and that narrative not only has unraveled, but now you've got something called sudden adult death syndrome. Sudden adult death syndrome. And again, that should be a crisis. You could have hearings. Why is this happening? Why are healthy people just dropping dead? What is causing this? Just curious. Again, nobody has the intellectual fortitude, right? Or, the intestinal fortitude and the intellectual curiosity. Nobody has that in this country, both political parties. The Republicans say we're going to do X, Y, and Z. They start doing X and then they back away most of the time. There are a handful of people in Congress that are standing up to some of this some of the time. There is a huge opening for a political force, whether it's a libertarian party or a populist party or a patriot party. The problem is the infrastructure doesn't allow for truly independent movements to take hold in this country. So all of my libertarian friends, and I have a few, I lost a few, but I have a few, all I can tell you guys is that good luck. Good luck trying to launch anything outside of the duopoly. I mean, you can't even infiltrate one of the two parties properly, right? Somebody who becomes outspoken within that movement is then like the most hated man in America, whether it's Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene. There are few people out there who've been consistently on the right side of history and said the right things. And I believe there's a political realignment happening where those people who are more on the right, maybe culturally, are also embracing a lot of policies that people on the left used to believe in, right? You know, due process, civil liberties, my body, my choice. That's a big one, right? Remember my body, my choice? No, I get it. You know, I don't want to have an abortion argument or anything. Is it a body here? Is it a body there? Whose body is it? You know, it's my body because it's under my jurisdiction. So I should have the right to do with my body. Again, you can have, I don't want to get into that argument. I have strong feelings on it. And, you know, I'm with the crowd that is happy that there might be some restrictions here or there on this, because I think this is part of an overall effort toward genocide that's been happening for decades. And I think it's being ramped up, and it's a soft sort of hidden genocide. It's not like, you know, leading people off to a gas chamber. It's brilliantly conceived. All of it, the last 2.5 years, it's been brilliantly executed. That's why people meet in Davos. That's why you have Bilderberg and all these different things. And I remember years ago, people, oh, Bilderberg, huh? You're one of those. You're one of those crazy people that believes in this stuff. I never like took it that seriously. I thought, okay, yeah, some elite type, you know, people, billionaires and so forth, meeting in Davos or meeting wherever. And now all of that stuff that sounded like conspiracy theory, all of that stuff is true, and you can't avoid it. It's very mainstream now too. It's extremely mainstream. So all of these events around us, all of these catastrophes that have been self-inflicted by governments around the world, all cooperating to do this, really points to just one thing. They don't like us. They want few of us on the planet. All of them are designed to cause chaos, right? We've got all these problems, and we're going to have a J6 event. We're going to have hearings on J6 because that's the most important thing. And we keep hearing about democracy. It's a war on democracy. How about people voting their conscience, and then can we even say this? I can't say it on YouTube, right? I can't say it. You vote, and then can I just say this, because we hear this a lot, and then you're disenfranchised, right? And I'm not talking about people who couldn't get to the polling place or who feel as though they were intimidated on their way to vote. No, these are people who voted and then became disenfranchised because of the system, because of what happened next. And if you voice your concerns, you're censored, banned, and in some cases, even made an example of. And then they say, oh, it's the big lie, the big lie. No, this entire government is the big lie. Everything they do is the big lie. And they tell you something opposite of what they're doing. And we're all supposed to sit here and just take it. We're supposed to smile, bend over, and say, yes, give me another, please. Give me another. And the absolute lunacy of paying attention to something that, quite honestly, was a failed insurrection. If it was an insurrection, it was the biggest failure ever. And they're going to tell you, you know, Capitol Police lost their lives in it. That's not true. That's not true. All of the 5 or whatever that they're citing, those people all lost their lives afterwards. The only person who lost their life there was somebody by the name of Ashley Babbitt, who was 36 years old, was unarmed, served our country, right? And she lost her life. And nobody wants to ask any questions about her. It's like her name doesn't exist in this media age. Somebody who was shot and killed by somebody within our government. See, this is why I do believe libertarians are right. When somebody in authority becomes completely unhinged with their own power, and they're able to do stuff like this without any repercussions, the whole thing has gone crazy. And there are police in certain jurisdictions, not all of them, but certain jurisdictions that behave like tyrants. They support their bosses, and their bosses are all tyrants. So they behave like tyrants so they can get their paycheck. Here's the only way out of this, by the way. This is the only way out of this. All of the economic turmoil, all of the medical turmoil, all the things that we've been faced with. There have to be a group of people, and this isn't anything real groundbreaking here because this is the only solution. And it's a very anti-libertarian solution, just so you know. I would have reservations if the military stood up and said, well, we're trying to follow the Constitution, and our politicians and those in authority are no longer following the United States Constitution. Therefore, those people need to be arrested because they did not take their oath of office seriously. And then cite, you could probably cite 100 examples. You could go on for hours talking about the breach, the border alone. I'm sorry, if you have a sovereign country, you're supposed to protect and defend the country, right? And this would be a libertarian argument. Hey, we're being invaded, so we're just going to allow the invasion, right? I mean, there are a lot of libertarians are so pro immigration that they just look at it as, hey, here's a great opportunity for more people to work hard and succeed and pursue their happiness. But but if you believe in countries, right? If you believe in borders and sovereignty in countries, those two ideas cannot coexist. You could still welcome people into this country, but just have a process in place. I mean, if we are the same, if we're attached to Venezuela, right? We're attached to Mexico, we're attached to South America. That means we're just basically part of a hemisphere. We're not a sovereign country. And so that's, I think, a constitutional breach. And there are so many other constitutional breaches. Due process, there's no you have a right to due process. These people that went to J6, they have a right to a speedy and fair trial. Speedy is not in there, and I don't think fair is in there either. They put people on these juries who have a bias, and then the judge says, okay, sure, well, we need that because we want to make sure that these people are prosecuted, even though many of them did nothing violent. If you want to say breaking and entering, whatever it is that you want to say, they could have already had their day in court, been sentenced, and probably gotten out of jail, probably, months and months ago. But there are so many things that I can cite, and it's tragic where we're at. It's sad. And again, this is a misdirection play. We're going to talk J6 in the midst of the economic turmoil, the medical tyranny, the gas prices, the baby food. I mean, you could go down the list of things. Oh, and of course, you got the pox that are lurking, right? Don't forget about the pox. And, that's why we have a whole bunch of new products that have been already designed and waiting for that moment to be used. And giving the government emergency powers and government holding on to those emergency powers well past the actual time of the emergency, again, is a constitutional breach They have no right to do this, especially since there are other solutions to the problem. The whole thing, the emergency use authorization, that whole thing goes out the window if there are other ways to deal with this. So I don't have a lot of hope for my country. I think two things are very likely to happen. Some type of non-kinetic civil war, which I think is technically already in progress, the possibility of a kinetic civil war. The other thing that I'm seeing is all of these efforts right now, and they're going to do everything they possibly can. That's why I think a health emergency is looming, is that we cannot have midterm elections. They cannot go off. And if they go off, it's going to be the same scandalous activity, and it's gonna result in the same outcome. That's all I can say. It'll be the same methodology, and it will result in the same outcome. This just happened, by the way, in Georgia. The same type of thing in the Georgia primaries. Either that or people don't care. People are, and you're going to see some fatigue. People are going to get very tired of dealing with this day to day. People are going to want to go back to pursuing happiness and enjoying their life and trying to work on themselves rather than constantly being wrapped up in this circus, which doesn't have an end point. It's gotten progressively more ridiculous every single year. And they worry about democracy. I mean, the only way we're going to have democracy is if, my point was, if the military steps in. And the military, taking an oath to the United States Constitution, says, nope, sorry, all these people are out of bounds, out of line. All of this stuff is unconstitutional and it needs to stop. And we're going to put a stop to it. And they've got the weapons, they've got the guns. And I would say this, I would say that is the only way that this stops. And if that's the kind of country that we're heading towards, that's very similar to what happens in third world countries where the military has to step in because all of the leaders are corrupt. Sometimes the military is just as corrupt. And I believe the military has been corrupted, but I don't think it's completely corrupted. Who knows? Who knows? I don't have a lot of hope for this because big things like this in the United States don't happen. They don't happen. We just have been the frog in the boiling water. It gets warmer and warmer, and then we're about to get boiled alive. And there are a lot of people that don't even see it. They don't care. They don't notice. They're too wrapped up in their own pursuits. I get that. After a while, like I said, a lot of people are going to check out because, okay, here we go with J6 again, right? We've got all these problems and they're going to focus on destroying what's left of Donald Trump. Okay, I'll take anybody. I mean, DeSantis, I'll take somebody who wants to run and fix the broken mess and say, okay, I'm going in, but I don't know if there's a political solution, especially if we don't get midterms. If the midterms don't go off in all 50 states as planned this fall, it will truly be the end of a Republican form of government, and that will just take anarchy to the next level. And I think America honestly needs a divorce. The states that are doing well need to divorce themselves from the federal government and just concentrate on their own borders and their own culture and their own energy and their own food. I mean, my question is to Florida, right? And any other state, can't we produce our own energy? Can't we as a state be energy independent? Can't we ramp up efforts to find solutions to these problems? Or do we just wait for Saudi Arabia? Is that what we do? We just wait for the Saudis to come in with the oil? And then, yeah, I do believe the oil companies take advantage in these situations, but we've set it up that way. Initially, that's not how it was set up. A couple of years ago, they weren't gouging. They weren't taking advantage of us. Now they are, because they see all the speculation, and they are well aware that we've ramped down our efforts to produce our own energy. And this is going to be a crisis where people can't recover from it. All right, a lot of rambling here. I'm sorry about the rambling. I tend to go off on tangents. My brain is thinking about 5 different things at once. All I can tell you, folks, J6 was a setup, and it continues to be a setup. Now, instead of setting up the people who went, it's now setting up the people who want us to move on and wanted us to move on probably a week after, right? And just focus on solutions to all these problems. But we get the government we deserve, and especially when the situation may not have been in the control of those of us who took part in the last election. We did so in good faith, and I believe that faith and trust was broken, and apparently we have no recourse. So that's my video.